The movie captivated millions, yet from the very beginning it faced an invisible wall of resistance, a subtle but persistent pressure from an industry that recoiled at anything resembling uncompromising truth. Mel Gibson, seated across from Joe Rogan on the podcast, recounted the arduous journey of bringing the passion of the Christ to life, a journey that would not only expose the inner workings of Hollywood, but also reveal the depths of human conviction, faith, and courage. But what if the most controversial film of the century carried secrets that no one was ever meant to uncover? What if, beneath the artistry, the painstaking research, and the meticulous direction, there existed truths so profound that even those familiar with extraordinary stories would find themselves shaken to their very core? As Gibson spoke, the conversation shifted, evolving from casual discussions of filmmaking, faith, and Hollywood politics into something wholly extraordinary. Rogan, a man accustomed to interviewing presidents, fighters, and whistleblowers, was visibly moved. This was not marketing. This was not controversy engineered for clicks or headlines. Gibson was pulling back a curtain Hollywood had fought desperately to keep closed for decades. And once you understand what lies beneath this story, you will never see the film in the same light again. This is the story no one dared to tell, until now. The Passion of the Christ was never intended to be just another biblical epic. Gibson had no interest in gloss or grandeur, no desire to craft a film that followed the predictable beats of a familiar narrative. He sought rawness, raw emotion, raw humanity, raw truth. He sought a film that would confront its audience, shaking them to their core, demanding that they not merely watch but feel, think, and wrestle with the meaning of sacrifice. "We are all responsible for this," Gibson explained to Rogan. His sacrifice was for all of humanity. Every shadow, every drop of blood, every agonized expression was deliberate. This was not cinema as entertainment, it was cinema as confrontation. It demanded attention, introspection, and above all, honesty from its viewers. To achieve this, Gibson immersed himself for years in the four Gospels, studying every line that described Christ's final hours with painstaking precision. He went further than most filmmakers dared, delving into ancient texts, theological commentary, and historical records, seeking not only to portray events accurately but also to convey their immense weight, the spiritual battles, the human suffering, and the divine purpose embedded in every agonizing moment. The opening scene exemplifies this vision perfectly, the Garden of Gethsemane. Darkness presses in from every side. Jesus kneels in prayer, his figure small and vulnerable, while his closest companions lie asleep, oblivious to the storm of destiny that approaches. The vulnerability is almost unbearable. Fully human yet fully divine, he sweats drops of blood under the crushing weight of what he knows is coming. Shadows twist and flicker unnaturally, hinting at unseen forces at play. Then Satan appears, slithering through the darkness, whispering doubts, fears, and temptations. Jesus crushes the serpent beneath his heel, a deliberate echo of Genesis, a reminder of the very first promise of redemption. Every frame, every gesture, every line of dialogue is imbued with intentional meaning. Gibson's audience is not permitted to remain passive observers. They are compelled to engage, to feel, to wrestle with questions of morality, responsibility, sacrifice, and redemption. It is a cinematic experience that does not comfort or entertain. It challenges, unsettles, and transforms. Gibson revealed to Rogan why The Passion of the Christ faced extraordinary resistance from the very beginning, exposing an uncomfortable truth about Hollywood's attitude toward religious storytelling. Films exploring Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, or Buddhism often receive careful, respectful treatment, with nuanced portrayals and a measured approach to cultural sensitivities. Christian stories, however, are treated differently. They are met with suspicion, dismissal, or, at times, outright hostility. "Christianity is the one religion people feel free to disparage," Gibson said with quiet intensity, his voice heavy with both frustration and resolve. "You can celebrate and embrace every other faith but cross Christianity, and suddenly it becomes controversial, dangerous even." Studios that should have been eager to support an Oscar-winning director went inexplicably cold. Calls went unanswered. Meetings were canceled without explanation. Trusted colleagues, people who had worked alongside him for years, began keeping their distance. The message was unmistakable. This story was not welcome, and neither, it seemed, was the man determined to tell it. Yet Gibson refused to compromise. For him, this was never merely a professional endeavor. It was deeply personal, rooted in the faith and convictions that had shaped his life. When traditional funding sources dried up, he did not relent. He financed the project himself, taking on an immense personal and financial risk that most directors would have shied away from. He handpicked a team of believers who shared his vision, individuals unafraid of controversy and unwavering in their commitment to authenticity. From that crucible of doubt, resistance, and relentless opposition emerged a film that would shock the world and redefine what audiences believed cinema could accomplish. The Passion of the Christ became one of the highest-grossing R-rated films in history, a staggering achievement that proved millions of viewers were hungry for storytelling that was unflinching, daring, and uncompromising. Hollywood had insisted nobody wanted this type of story. Gibson and his audience proved them wrong. The making of the film itself bordered on the miraculous, a convergence of human endurance, spiritual intensity, and circumstances that seemed to defy natural explanation. Jim Caviezel, cast as Jesus, endured suffering that went far beyond acting. The cross he carried during the crucifixion weighed over 30 pounds, dislocating his shoulder during a single take. During the scourging scene, he was struck with real whips, once so violently that his hands were raw, bleeding, and his lungs heaving for air. His pain was not a performance. It was real, visceral, and impossible to ignore. That authenticity permeates every frame of the finished film, leaving viewers shaken, horrified, and deeply moved in equal measure. Every anguished expression, every drop of blood, every sound of breath or moan carries the weight of genuine suffering, and the screen becomes a mirror, forcing audiences to confront the true cost of sacrifice. Even the natural world seemed to participate in the unfolding story. Lightning struck multiple times during filming, hitting crew members and Gibson himself. Yet somehow, remarkably, everyone emerged unharmed. In biblical tradition, lightning symbolizes divine power, judgment, and revelation. On this set, the line between the natural and supernatural felt frighteningly thin, leaving the cast and crew to wonder whether they were witnessing something beyond ordinary filmmaking. The air itself seemed charged, heavy with tension and expectation. Shadows shifted as if alive. Sudden gusts of wind swept through the set at moments of extreme emotional intensity, and inexplicable occurrences left everyone questioning the boundary between what was real and what was miraculous. Each incident, each small anomaly, seemed to underline the gravity of the story being told, a story not merely of history but of cosmic significance. The intensity of the production went far beyond physical endurance. Cast members underwent profound emotional and spiritual transformations. Luca Lionel, who portrayed Judas, entered the project as a skeptic and left as a believer, profoundly changed by months spent inhabiting a character consumed by betrayal and confronting the forces of guilt and redemption. Maya Morgan-Stern, portraying Mary, carried new life within her during filming, a quiet, symbolic echo of resurrection and renewal woven into the very narrative she helped bring to life. Stories emerged of unexplained healings and restored senses among those who spent time on set, suggesting that something extraordinary was happening, something that transcended mere storytelling. Whether interpreted as divine intervention, coincidence, or the psychological power of intense, immersive storytelling, the cast and crew left convinced they had participated in something far greater than a film, a sacred, transformative experience that defied rational explanation. Every detail, every moment, every shadow on that set was imbued with weight and intention. This was filmmaking pushed to its most extreme edge, where human endurance, artistic vision, and spiritual intensity collided. The industry's resistance, the physical suffering, the inexplicable events, they all became part of the story, a story of conviction and courage that would resonate with audiences in ways Hollywood had never anticipated. The Passion of the Christ was no longer just a movie. It had become a phenomenon, a testament to the power of storytelling born of unyielding faith, personal sacrifice, and unwavering vision. The transformations experienced during the making of the Passion of the Christ extended far beyond the physical realm, reaching deep into the spiritual and emotional lives of those involved. Luca Lionel, who portrayed Judas, entered the production as a committed atheist, skeptical of anything resembling the divine. Yet by the time filming concluded, he had become a believer, profoundly changed by months spent inhabiting a character consumed by betrayal and forced to confront themes of guilt, redemption, and spiritual warfare. His transformation was not casual or superficial. It was a deep, personal reckoning with the forces of human weakness and the potential for moral restoration. Maya Morgan-Stern, portraying Mary, experienced a quiet, symbolic miracle of her own. She was secretly pregnant during filming, carrying new life even as she portrayed grief and despair at the foot of the cross. Her pregnancy became an unspoken echo of the film's themes, resurrection, renewal, and the fragile, enduring continuity of life. Around the set, whispers began circulating of extraordinary occurrences, unexplained healings, restored senses, moments of intuition or clarity that seemed impossible to rationalize. Whether these were divine interventions, remarkable coincidences, or the psychological power of immersive, intense storytelling, the cast and crew left the production convinced they had been part of something far greater than a film, an experience that transcended cinema itself. One scene in particular encapsulates Gibson's profound artistic vision. After the crucifixion, Jesus' lifeless body rests in Mary's arms, echoing the form of Michelangelo's iconic Pieta. The composition is breathtaking in its simplicity and power, capturing grief and grace simultaneously, devastation and dignity, human sorrow and divine purpose. Every gesture, every shadow, every subtle shift of light was meticulously designed to speak to universal human experiences: love, loss, hope, endurance, and the struggle to find meaning amid suffering. It transcends religious tradition to touch something deeply human, something that resonates across culture, faith, and personal belief. Critical reception was sharply divided, yet the intensity of the responses only amplified the film's impact. Roger Ebert, one of the most influential critics of his generation, awarded it 4 stars, describing it as the most violent and intense portrayal of Christ's suffering he had ever witnessed, a depiction so raw that it forced him to reckon with the depth of human pain in a way he never had before. Religious leaders, however, voiced concerns, particularly regarding depictions that could be misinterpreted or potentially perpetuate harmful historical stereotypes. Scholars debated scenes with no direct biblical precedent, such as Judas being tormented by demonic children, and questioned the artistic choices behind them. Gibson responded with clarity and conviction. These were not distortions but deliberate artistic interpretations, cinematic language crafted to convey spiritual truths, not documentary fact. The film walked a careful tightrope between historical representation and theological meditation, challenging audiences to engage intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. Few viewers left indifferent. Some found it profoundly transformative, others deeply unsettling, yet everyone was forced to reckon with the questions it raised. The controversy only magnified curiosity, drawing in audiences who might otherwise have ignored religious cinema altogether. Yet for Gibson, The Passion of the Christ was only the beginning. During his interview with Rogan, he revealed that for the past 6 to 7 years, he and screenwriter Randall Wallace have been quietly developing an even more ambitious project, a cinematic exploration of the resurrection, unlike anything attempted before. This film will not follow a conventional linear narrative. Instead, it seeks to illuminate the eternal cosmic battle between good and evil, spanning from the fall of the angels to the death of the last apostle. It is not merely a sequel. It is an unprecedented expansion of storytelling, connecting the resurrection to every event preceding and following it, revealing the profound consequences of that singular moment in history. Gibson has plunged into ancient texts, theological debates, and historical research to craft a narrative that challenges audiences to see familiar stories through entirely new eyes. For him, the Gospels are not myth or allegory. They are history, validated by apostles who willingly faced death rather than deny what they had witnessed. Who dies for something they know is a lie? He asked Rogan, a question loaded with weight and conviction. For Gibson, that question alone affirms the supernatural claims at the very heart of Christianity, grounding the resurrection not as a symbolic idea, but as an event whose magnitude reverberates through time, demanding attention, belief, and reflection. So what was it that truly shook Joe Rogan? It was not a single moment, a single revelation, or even one striking confession. It was the cumulative weight of the story, the staggering magnitude of what Mel Gibson had undertaken, the almost unimaginable obstacles he had faced, and the extraordinary consequences of telling a story the world seemed determined to suppress. It was the realization that a filmmaker had stood nearly alone, confronting an industry that did everything in its power to resist his vision. Every phone call ignored, every meeting canceled, Eve. Right colleague who turned away. It all became part of a larger narrative of defiance, courage, and conviction. Rogan, a man accustomed to interviewing presidents, fighters, and whistleblowers, found himself visibly moved. This was not manufactured controversy. It was not hype designed to sell tickets or generate headlines. It was the raw, unvarnished truth of a man who refused to compromise his artistic and spiritual mission. It was also the knowledge that the production itself had ventured into realms that defied rational explanation. Supernatural occurrences on set, the lightning strikes, the inexplicable healings, the transformations of cast and crew, suggested that the story being told was somehow alive, interacting with reality in ways that no ordinary film could. It was a story where the boundary between human effort and divine intervention felt impossibly thin, where intense faith, conviction, and art collided to create something that transcended the ordinary limits of cinema. And beyond the spectacle, beyond the mystery, there was a deeper truth. That art born of unflinching sincerity can change lives, inspire belief, and awaken audiences to realities they might otherwise never confront. It was a reminder that faith sometimes demands suffering, that truth often demands risking everything, including career, reputation, and safety, for the sake of telling a story that matters. These truths cut through the pervasive cynicism of our age, piercing the veneer of calculation, image management, and profit-driven decision-making. They proved that conviction and sincerity still exist, even in a world dominated by superficiality. Gibson's journey reminds us that the most controversial stories are often the ones most urgently in need of being heard. The stories that challenge our comfort, confront our assumptions, and demand that we engage with difficult questions about morality, justice, faith, and human suffering. The Passion of the Christ forces viewers to face truths that most modern entertainment actively avoids. It does not offer comforting answers or tidy resolutions. Instead, it demands reflection on the weighty realities of suffering, the staggering cost of sacrifice, and the profound mystery of redemption. It asks difficult questions. What does it truly mean to suffer for a greater purpose? What is the nature of divine justice? What is the price of salvation, and can we ever fully comprehend it? These are questions that challenge the intellect, stir the soul, and demand emotional engagement. Questions that refuse to be ignored, dismissed, or simplified. More than 2 decades after its release, the film remains divisive. For some, it is a transcendent masterpiece of spiritual cinema, a work of art that conveys the deepest truths of human experience and divine purpose. For others, it is unsettling, controversial, and deeply challenging. Yet this division itself is a testament to the power of great art. It provokes, it challenges, it refuses to allow viewers to remain comfortable or indifferent. It reaches into something elemental within us, something we cannot categorize, rationalize, or ignore. A conversation between Gibson and Rogen revealed the hidden layers behind the film's controversy. The struggle to create in the face of systemic opposition, the personal sacrifices made to bring a sacred story to life, and the unwavering commitment to a vision that demanded courage and integrity. It reminded audiences that reality contains mysteries beyond materialist explanations, that life contains forces, coincidences, and interventions that cannot always be accounted for or understood. It underscored that vulnerability, even from those who appear unyielding or controversial, possesses a profound power, the power to move hearts, open minds, and inspire action. The Passion of the Christ was never just a movie. It was a man betting everything, his career, his reputation, his livelihood, on a story the world tried to silence. And in doing so, he won not just a box office victory, but a moral and spiritual triumph. The hidden truths behind the film are no longer hidden. They stand ready, waiting for anyone willing to see, to listen, and to allow themselves to be transformed. These are stories that demand something real: attention, empathy, courage, and reflection. They are stories that leave a mark, shaping not just how we view cinema, but how we understand the human experience, the cost of conviction, and the power of truth. Stories like this do not simply entertain, they endure. They challenge us to question, to wrestle with uncertainty, and to confront realities we would often rather ignore. They remind us that sincerity and courage are still possible, that artistic vision can transcend commerce and cynicism, and that some stories are so vital, so profound, that they demand to be told no matter the cost. The Passion of the Christ is one such story, a story that transforms those who engage with it, a story that lingers low. NG after the credits roll, and a story whose impact resonates far beyond the cinema, echoing in hearts and minds for generations to come.